Hi, welcome to this demo of IBM Spectrum Protect Plus version 10.1.3. I'll be going through how to run the Spectrum Protect Plus server using high availability or fault tolerance. High availability is the concept or goal of ensuring that the critical systems are always up and functioning. And so this is done by creating and managing the ability to automatically fail over to a secondary system if the primary system goes down for any reason. And this basically eliminates all single points of failure from your infrastructure. Whereas fault tolerance refers to a system or technology that's designed in such a way that when one component fails, whether it's hardware or software, a backup component will take over operations immediately so that there's no loss of service. And so basically you have redundancy in place as a backup component. And the more backup components that are in place, the more tolerant your network is going to be of hardware and software failures. You can do this in both Hyper-V and vSphere. I'm going to be showing you it in vSphere. And I'm going to start with high availability. And a couple things to note on high availability is that, first of all, when you set up the Spectrum Protect Plus, make sure you follow the blueprints. And then there is no special setup inside a Spectrum Protect Plus server. And once you get the vSphere set up and configured for high availability, then it will be able to work with Spectrum Protect Plus automatically. Now, even if you use high availability, you still need to do Spectrum Protect Plus catalog backups and have a recovery plan in place. For a proactive high availability where you have a planned outage, there should be no disruption of the Spectrum Protect Plus server services. And it should be basically equivalent to a host migration operation. In the case of an unplanned failover event, in general, the outcomes will be similar to a power stun on the virtual machine, and any jobs or tasks that were in flight will show up as aborted, which means that since they were aborted and are not marked failed, you won't be able to use the new 10.1.3 rerun failed job feature. The VMDK backup jobs will be canceled and cleaned up when Spectrum Protect Plus server becomes available, and any connections to vSphere will automatically be cleaned up. All of those jobs should start normally at the next scheduled operation, and any mount operations for data reuse operations should still persist. So let's go ahead and take a look at high availability inside of vSphere. We'll start by logging on to the vCenter. Now remember, in Hyper-V it should be basically the same, so I'm just going to show you the vCenter setup. We're going to go into our cluster, and we're going to go ahead and click Configure. And in here you'll see our vSphere Availability tab. Click on that. And you should see Host Failover turned on. We already have this set up. And the response will be Restart Virtual Machines. Currently, our proactive HA is disabled. You could set that up if you want to have it available for planned failovers. If you want to make changes to these settings, you can go into the Edit area. And here, if you click on Restart VMs, and the drop-down will then allow you to either disable it or to choose to restart the virtual machines. And once you've made the changes, then you can click OK. If we go and look at a virtual machine, this is the virtual machine where our Spectrum Protect Plus server is running. You can see that the host failure is set to restart the virtual machine, and that was based off of the setting we just did for the cluster. Now, if you wanted to test this high availability, you could basically power on and off the virtual machine, and that would simulate a failure. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about fault tolerance. In order to turn on fault tolerance, you do have to first set up high availability. With Spectrum Protect Plus, fault tolerance is where your Spectrum Protect Plus server in a VMware vSphere is set with fault tolerance configured. There is currently no support for fault tolerance in Microsoft Hyper-V. Once again, you want to make sure that you've followed the Spectrum Protect Plus blueprints, and any of the other components like vSnap servers or VADP proxies have been moved to different machines. There is going to be no special setup required inside of Spectrum Protect Plus, only inside of vSphere. And using high availability feature and fault tolerance, once again, you've still got to do your Spectrum Protect Plus catalog backup and recovery plans. The expectation in case of a transparent failover to the secondary virtual machine is that there should be no disruption to the Spectrum Protect Plus server service. Now, some considerations before using vSphere fault tolerance with the Spectrum Protect Plus server is you've got to look at the number of virtual CPUs that are supported by a single fault-tolerant virtual machine and what that is set to in the level of licensing that you've purchased for vSphere. This is also going to be dependent on the version of vSphere you're running. And so make sure that the CPU requirements as dictated by the Spectrum Protect blueprints are still met and that you're not having to reduce them in order to use fault tolerance. Do not do that. You do want to test and consider performance because fault tolerance is continuously replicating the underlying virtual machine, and this may cause you to experience performance degradations which are not suitable to host a backup application. So do test that beforehand. And a simple way to test your performance is to compare the throughput and performance of a full virtual machine backup with fault tolerance enabled versus the backup performance with it disabled. Now, the vSphere fault tolerance doesn't support virtual machines with raw disks. Okay, let me show you how to set up fault tolerance inside of vSphere. So on the Spectrum Protect Plus server virtual machine, if you right click, you're simply going to click fault tolerance and then turn on fault tolerance. And it will go out and set that if you have enough CPUs and if you have the correct licensing and everything else. As you can see here by the errors that we get, we do not have the correct licensing and our virtual machine has 8 virtual CPUs, which is not supported by the fault tolerance for our licensing. So in our case, I cannot turn it on just because of the licensing we have enabled. But for you, hopefully, if you have the licensing in the correct version of vSphere, it will be that easy to turn on. Okay, so in summary, you can now run Spectrum Protect Plus server on a vSphere or Hyper-V environment that has high availability turned on, and you can run it in fault tolerance mode for a vSphere environment. Thank you very much.